From making some of the best video games in the industry, to seemingly wanting to bully other developers out of the industry, this is Nintendo, and they've just gotten even worse. It's no secret that Nintendo has always been very anti-consumer, whether it's going after emulators or taking down fan games, or basically throwing lawsuits anyone's way who even thinks about making a game very similar to their own IPs. Nintendo has gotten even worse with the recent patents. How bad, you ask? Well, Nintendo has a US patent on summoning characters and making them battle for you. I repeat again, summoning characters and making them battle for you. This unbelievably vague pattern applies to basically any RPG with a summoner class, well-known examples being Smite or World of Warcraft, or even Mass Effect's Engineer class, or even Dragon Quest VIII, which allows you to summon monsters to help you in battle. Why not go one step further with more underrated examples, being Bloons Tower Defense 6 or even Dungeon Defenders? I hope you're not planning on summoning a fucking Iron Golem the next time you're playing Minecraft. Pick at random one of the Dark Souls games that From Software makes, which allow you to summon NPCs to help you defeat boss fights. Apparently Nintendo's gonna have patents against them as well. But don't you worry, it gets even worse, because they've also filed a patent against riding an airborne or ground mount, which is literally a fundamental feature in any video game that has a horse. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Colossus, Skyrim, fuck, are we gonna throw in Doom the Dark Ages as well because Doomslayer rides a fucking dragon? I don't even know how these patents would even take effect, because there are so many games over the last 30 plus years that have these mechanics. They're not exactly niche. Nintendo has gone beyond protecting their own IPs to downright owning fucking video game mechanics. And the sad thing about this is that the patents don't even need to be in effect. Nintendo doesn't have to take any of these smaller indie companies to court, because the very threat looming over their heads is enough to make them think twice, and that is just gonna catch on fire within the concept of ingenuity and innovation. Smaller developers, especially indie ones, are no longer gonna look at Nintendo and think, man, we are inspired by you. We're gonna look at your game mechanics and we're gonna make something that is similar, but with our own flair, our own innovation, our own ideas thrown into the mix. That's not going to be a thing anymore. They're instead going to be thinking, is what we are making going to backfire and bankrupt us? Because Nintendo is going to potentially file lawsuits against us with all of the money in the world and all of the big scary lawyers that we do not have a counter for. Does that sound healthy for the video game industry at all to you? So this begs the question. Nintendo has been taking down fan-made projects that have been inspired from their own IPs for years now. So why have they waited until 2025 to have these patents be put into effect? And to put it simply, it happened because a very small survival game with creature companions became one of the biggest games in the last 5 years. Love it or hate it, it's pretty clear that Palworld was one of the most highly anticipated and demanded games in the last few years, being the second game to reach 2 million concurrent players on Steam, with it achieving 25 million copies sold worldwide across multiple platforms. Overnight, this relatively small survival game became massive competition for Pokemon. Did it take inspiration from Pokemon? Of course it is. I mean, the inspirations are clear as day on screen. But what made this game so good was the innovation, because it had things like base building, it was a third-person shooter, it had gliding, it had a ton of other mechanics, and it truly was a breath of fresh air. Compare that to Pokemon, where the golden age of the DS and the Game Boy Advance are long gone, and instead Nintendo has been getting rather complacent with games that are mid at best, or downright broken in other instances. Oh, and I guess we can also now add new Pokemon games that are becoming pay to win with Pokemon Legends ZA. The overwhelming sales numbers of Palworld were undeniable proof that yes, there was massive demand for a Pokemon-esque game that inspired and innovated, things that Nintendo were unwilling to do. And as is the case within the video game industry, if you aren't willing to give the people what they want, then you get the fuck out of the way and make room for someone who will. Well, that's how it should be, of course, but obviously Nintendo, being the scumbag pieces of shit that they are, decided to take option C and threaten lawsuits against the developers of Palworld. What's that? Nintendo responded to the competition by deciding to knuckle down and make the best Pokemon game they possibly could for the Switch and the Switch 2. No, they threatened them with legal warfare. They literally threatened the competition by simply removing any competition imaginable. And whilst Palworld is still very successful, the threats of legal action resulted in several updates and patches for Palworld, which basically just removed core features from the game and made the game worse. Like, instead of throwing a sphere to summon the pals, they now just appear next to the player. And instead of riding pals into battle, which was actually really cool, you now just get a fucking Fortnite glider. Wonderful. Oh, and by the way, that's another patent they issued. Throwing balls to summon creatures. Well, I guess I shouldn't throw my testicles around anymore then. Nintendo could get on my ass and sue me. And like I said earlier, this isn't new behavior for Nintendo. They've been going after fan-made projects, fan-made games, and fan-hosted events for years now, such as going after and cancelling Smash Bros. Tournaments, shutting down charity-inspired Joy-Cons in memory of Edika, a Nintendo-based YouTuber with over 800,000 subscribers. Nintendo took a look at the efforts to raise money for mental health and they shut that down. Going after the very well-known, very iconic Pokemon mod for Minecraft known as Pixelmon and requesting that it gets taken down and that all development be ceased for it. Taking down Pokemon fan games on Roblox such as the iconic Project Pokemon or Pokemon Brick Bronze. Why? Was the prospect of the fans making better games than you too much for your bruised Japanese egos? Don't even get me started on when Nintendo filed a lawsuit that literally reached $30 million, or the equivalent anyways, against Japanese developers Colopil just because they enabled you to drag characters across the screen with an interactive Joy-Con or some shit like that. Nintendo basically tried patenting touch controls. Like, bloody hell, mobile gaming is gonna die overnight if that goes into effect. And ultimately this comes back round to the question of why are Nintendo even doing this? And simply put, they're doing it because they can get away with it. They're one of the biggest, most established video game companies of all time and they have all the money in the world. Why spend time, effort, money and passion making the best Pokemon game possible when you can simply shut down any and all competition, forcing people to either buy your slop or do without? Why take inspiration from fan-made projects when you can simply delete them from existence? Why charge a reasonable amount of money for new games when you can simply increase how expensive the games are and your fan base will buy them anyways? Why spend your billions of dollars on game development and increasing your range to earn more money when you can simply silence any and all competition and force lawsuits on people? The one positive thing to take from this situation is that more and more people are opening their eyes to how anti-consumer Nintendo are and how utterly awful they treat their competition. Well done, Nintendo. You have only succeeded in making me never want to give you any of my hard-earned money ever again. I thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care and have a good rest of your night.